Okay. I was muted, sorry. So let me take it from the beginning. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we will continue our discussions on Sunnah, prophethood, and we will continue with the 6th point in the 11th. I forgot the English. Oh, flashes, yeah. 11th flash. Before we start reading the 6th point, as usual, who would like to remind us what we studied so far? Even a few words would be good enough. And I see Natalia has the strength and courage, inshallah.
Well, I remember I had the last question last week. And I just want to talk about what that was, and it was that need that we have to be loved. And we cannot seem to find satisfaction for that need anywhere in this world. So we were talking about the love of God and how we should want that, because he's the love from him would be the only way to satisfy that love that we have, that the need for love that we have, since his love would be eternal. That's it.
Jazakallah khairan. Anyone else? Okay, let's continue with the 6th point then. I will not take more of your time. So let's start with a very short roadmap. What waits for us? So the 6th point will be pretty important to understand, inshallah. Let's read carefully. So it will start with the idea of bid'ah, innovation. Okay? Innovation in religion, innovation in understanding practices of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And then he will say there are 2 types of sunnah. One obligatory, as we said before, we are using sunnah as a umbrella term for practices of prophet. Okay, and this is a common use in scholarly works. So he will tell us that there are 2 types of sunnah. One is the obligatory one, and the other one is the voluntary ones. Okay, obligatory and the voluntary. And he will say the voluntary ones are also 2 types. One related to worship and similar stuff. And then the other one is related to adab, the conducts, right? How you act, how you behave, and so on. Okay. And then after he explains all these, finally he will talk about the marks, the symbols of Islam, and how they are the most important, among the most important sunnah, the practices. So who wants to read the 6th point? You? Okay.
The noble messenger, upon whom be blessings and peace, said, all innovations are misguidance, and all misguidance leads to hell. That is to say, according to the verse, this day have I perfected for you your religion. Not to care for the rules of the illustrious Sharia and principles of the Prophet, peace be upon him, practices after they have been completed and perfected, and to adopt new creations, or God forbid, create innovations, which infers considering them to be deficient, is misguidance and leads to hellfire. There are degrees in the practices. Some are compulsory, these may not be given up. This sort are described in detail in the illustrious Sharia. They are incontestable and can in no way be changed. Another sort are voluntary, and these are of 2 sorts. One sort includes those practices related to worship. They too are described in the books of the Sharia, and to change them is innovation. The other sort is known as conduct or adab. These practices are mentioned in the books of the Prophet, peace be upon him's biography. Opposition to them cannot be called innovation, but it is opposition of a sort to the Prophet's conduct and means not benefiting from its light and true courtesy. Following this sort entails emulating him in customary natural acts and dealings, which are known through unanimous reports. For example, there are numerous practices showing the conduct of speaking and explaining the principles of eating, drinking, and sleeping, and social relations. Practices of this sort are called conduct. The person who practices them transforms his habitual actions into worship and receives significant effulgence. Practicing the smallest aspect of such conduct recalls God's messengers, peace be upon him, which imparts a light to his heart. The most important among the practices are those that symbolize Islam and are connected with its marks. The marks of Islam are worship, concern the community, and quite simply are general rights of a sort. Just as the whole community benefits from one person doing them, so too, if he gives them up, the whole community is answerable. There can be no hypocrisy in the performance of marks of this sort, and they should be proclaimed openly. Even if they are of the voluntary sort, they are still more important than personal obligatory acts.
Are there any initial comments, ideas, thoughts, questions before we start diving deep? Please go ahead.
Today we were discussing a similar topic, but before we started the conversation, we asked the question, what comes to your mind when we say practices of Prophet? 3 people said smiling, which was interesting. So I guess the description that's expanding the idea in here is important, because I guess we were likening the idea of, if I were to tell you, let's say Martin Luther King, what comes to your mind first? Like fighter for equality, let's say. So I guess this tells us what we understand from Sunnah when we talk about Sunnah. So this distinction is important in this regard.
Any other comments? Okay, I will give my summary as well. I have some notes. Let's start with how Yusuf started. So we already said that before, but this text is opening this up nicely. So when we say Sunnah, the practices of Prophet, author, the Imam Nursi, like almost putting an emphasis there, because he mentions this in many places. When he says, for instance, there are degrees in the practices, some are compulsory, the obligatory, right? I think this is important because what he's conveying here is that whatever you know about your religion, whatever you know about, let's say, the Creator, coming from Prophet. It's coming from Prophet's students and so on. So practices of Prophet, and one part includes obligatory things. Like what are these? Praying. La ilaha illallah. Right? The kalima, as we would say. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah and so on. But the idea of la ilaha illallah is maybe the biggest sunnah. Okay? And it is obligatory. If there is no la ilaha illallah, if you say, oh yeah, there is God, but also I worship my, husband. I worship my work. I worship my health, my body. People would say my body is my temple, right? It's very common. Then, no, There is no religion for you, right? It's an obligatory sunnah of the Prophet. What else? Like praying salah, for instance, right? What else? The obligatory, the practices of Prophet. Zakah, yes. Sacrifice, right? Sacrifice in general sense, like practically sacrificing an animal during Eid Fitr. No. Say it again. Idha, yes. But also in general, sacrificing everything that you rely on. These are the obligatory practices of Prophet. Or salawat. It is obligatory upon us. When we hear the name of the Prophet, ﷺ, just like I did now, we say salawat. Right? We say peace and blessings be upon him. It's an obligatory thing. Or calling adhan, like before prayers, informing people, and calling adhan is also one of the marks of the Islam, as he mentions at the very end. So why these are, like, why we're talking about these obligatory practices of the Prophet, and they are obligatory because without them, your iman or your tawheed, understanding of tawheed, collapses. No la ilaha illallah, no iman, no tawheed. No salawat, no tawheed. Why? Because only through Prophet you can believe in the one who creates and guides. No belief in Prophet, no belief in the Creator who guides, who speaks, who sustains. They are all very interrelated to each other. No zakat, no iman in, like iman is like by itself doesn't mean much. You have iman in something, belief in something, right? No zakat, meaning no belief in the one who owns everything, including your money, including your desire how to spend it. Your iman, your tawheed, your religion collapses without them. This is one type, he says, of the practices of Sunnah, the practices of Prophet. Just give me a second, my phone giving me a hard time. I apologize. The other, so here he says, like, you cannot even talk about innovation with this obligatory part. Even idea of innovation is like, cannot be there, right? With the obligatory part. Like, you cannot say that, oh, do you know what? I mean, I will follow the same religion, but believe in a different God. There's no point of that, right? And then he says, the others are more voluntary. I mean, we should discuss what we understand from voluntary. And when Yusuf gave the example, what comes to your mind when we say practice of Prophet, smiling? That's what we mean when we say voluntary sunnah, right? What is the next one?
So he talks about the third category, conduct. Maybe smiling even goes into conduct.
So no, he says it starts with two. There are degrees in practices. Some are compulsory. These may not be given up. And others are voluntary, which are two types. Yeah. So one sort, he says, includes those practices related to worship. Right? We know that how we have to pray, but the details, right? coming from, again, the Prophet's lineage. So when we say voluntary here, don't take it wrongly. It doesn't mean like, I mean, you can do it, but if you don't want to, you don't have to do it. It means there are some flexibility there. The way you practice salah, for instance, may change based on, let's say, what school of thought you are following, and so on. Right? So he says the those relate to worship. They are too described in the books of the Sharia, and to change them is innovation. Now we can talk about bid'ah now. The other sort is known as conduct. We will study this last. But let's stop here and collect your initial thoughts. What kind of image, comes to your mind when author describes these different practices, different sunnah? Okay. If not, we can continue. You want to say something? Oh, it's because of the adhan? Because I said call adhan is obligatory. Everybody is respectful. Okay, alhamdulillah. Yes.
So I have a quick question. So when I hear like compulsory sunnah, like the mu'akkada, like that word comes to my mind. That's what I've heard like throughout my life, where like, for example, even in some prayers, like the Prophet used to pray 4 rakah sunnah with asr, but they're ghair mu'akkada, they're like not compulsory. He used to pray them sometimes, not sometimes. But here you're like the compulsory sunnah or the obligatory sunnah that you're talking about, they're like all like obligatory aspects of like, or the fard aspects of Islam too. So I'm trying to understand where the distinction is, or is there no distinction there?
No distinction in one sense, because like everything you would count as obligatory in your sense will be also part of the obligatory sunnah as author uses. Everything you would count, it will be counted under that term. So my limited knowledge of scholarly works and so on, very limited knowledge, my understanding is that these terms has different, let's say, meanings when they are applied in different sciences. Like, for instance, in the science of fiqh, okay, they would use sunnah in the way that you use. Okay, it will be a narrow sense of sunnah when it comes to telling people, because the idea of fiqh, especially when it comes to us, how we understand it, it's about what to telling people, guiding them necessary conditions for worship, necessary conditions that would make salah possible. Okay? When you take it from that perspective, you have to know what I need to do as an obligatory thing and what I can do to benefit more, but I don't have to do. Your mind would work in such way. Hence, the word sunnah will be used, in a, let's say, this narrow sense. But when it comes to study of, as Nursi is leading us here, study of tawheed, itiqad, right? The same term can be used in a more broader sense.
The way, like, I feel like the word Sharia is used here, and Like, would we take Sharia as then like how we earlier described it as the path that the Prophet took and not the literal Sharia law?
I wouldn't say not the literal Sharia law, because the path would also include the law as well.
There's other term called
For obligatory.
yeah.
So when it comes to, again, the detailed fiqh matters, they would say there is fard, there is wajib, there is sunnah, there is say it again. Yes. Yeah, all these different terms would be used because in fiqh you have to be very specific. You have to tell people what to do now and what not to do now. Okay? It has to be that specific. But again, when it comes to the matter of belief, iman, you need to use a broader term. Otherwise, so if you use the sunnah in that narrow sense, when we study belief in Prophet, it will give you an impression that certain matter of beliefs come from the Prophet, and the rest, you don't need Prophet. Because what comes from the Prophet is voluntary things. It's like the cream of the cake. So you have to make like this explanation from Imam Nursi. It's extremely important. Using Sunnah in that sense, teaching us that whatever you have in your religion, whatever you have in belief, it has to come from Prophet, path of the Prophet. Even the obligatory things is counted as part of the practices of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Well, I didn't ask a question. He asked a question.
Well, the original question you answered.
What question? Did I ask a question? I'm sorry.
When you opened up the discussion, where did you want to go?
Let's continue with Kadir's question while I think about that question.
How would you define like the beard thing? It's very common. Like people say it's the sunnah of the Prophet to have a beard. Like people even say like some people even define the length of like what it should be. But then another side says like it was pretty common back in the day. It was like, does that beard have any connection to my iman? Like having that beard, is it getting me closer to my creator? Like, is there any way possible that? Because like one could say like that was just like common practice back in that day. So how do you define those kind of things? Like, are those obligatory? Are those not obligatory?
So the way now this is being framed here, because Imam Nursi is mentioning about bid'ah and like relating it to Sunnah, putting this verse, this day I have perfected you, for you, your religion. So like he didn't talk about it only in the sense of Prophet's applications in his life, which are on the periphery, you would say, or they are, as Brother Birkan was saying, the cream of the cake and whatnot. But pretty much everything that Prophet demonstrated in his life is now then being understood as Sunnah. So this is, as was mentioned, a different sense of the use of the term Sunnah than we use it as optional. This is how we generally understand it. Sunnah means optional. But right here, it looks like it is practices of prophets. And among these practices, some are that you have to do, some are optional. So this is it. But one important point that I would like to highlight here is we do have those practices in our lives as well. Like you have your friend out there which has a beard. Is your friend following prophetic practice? Like, let's say your friend is an atheist, but has a beard. Like, is this beard a Sunnah beard? Let's assume length is ideal. Okay, and the way it's I don't know, combed is ideal and everything. Is this a Sunnah beard? You would say no, of course, because the guy doesn't even know Prophet. So how about the reverse? Like Prophet has a beard. What makes his beard Sunnah? Beard is an easy example, but more controversial examples are what makes his marriage different than your marriage, my marriage. Like what makes it Sunnah is important. This is why such a framing is important here, because then we need to ask the question, what constitutes the heart of Prophet's Sunnah, so that I am going to understand all the rest of the Sunnah in the light of his core message. What I mean by this, does this make sense or not yet? Not yet, okay. So when we were discussing this today, asked the question, what's the biggest Sunnah of the Prophet? And people said smiling, smiling, smiling 3 times, different people. But then as we digged further, we asking the question, it took some time to really get the answer that I was looking for. La ilaha illallah is the biggest Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is the very core of him. Like if you are going to describe him with a single word, as they say, like if you are going to get into an island, you're only allowed to take 3 things. What would you take? Now I'm allowing you to use just a single word to describe Prophet. What would you say? This would be his biggest practice. La ilaha illallah. This is at the core. All his actions are going to be manifestations of this central Sunnah, this central practice. Combing the hair, or marriage, or how he treated his like people or the children and whatnot. I need to ask the question, how is this the manifestation of La ilaha illallah? Because La ilaha illallah is at the very core. Like if I was a, I don't know, mannequin here with certain holes here in the mouth and whatnot, if there was a red light put inside me, you will see a red light coming out of my eyes. If it was a green light put inside me, green light will come out of my eyes, right? Does this metaphor make sense? So Prophet inside, in his personality, is La ilaha illallah. Whatever comes out is a manifestation of La ilaha illallah. This is why such a description of Sunnah is important, because I'm going to interpret all the events that I hear or like got narrated from Prophet ﷺ in the light of these central events, including your question. No, did it make sense? Somewhat.
Like very short answer, if you are concerned, so that's the, I guess, the word that needs to be highlighted. If you are concerned and interested in how should I comb my beard, and you have such a question, then you say, okay, I will ask my Prophet to get the answer. There are, may Allah be pleased with all of them, there are all these scholars out there putting their life, entire life, not like us, studying Quran and so on once in a week or so. For their entire life, they studied what Prophet did in this occasion, that occasion. They tried their best to narrate all these details and so on. You will go and ask them and learn that. But what we're trying to establish here with these texts, this concern part, that you should be concerned about every action of yours, every feature of yours, that what is the best way to please my Creator? It seems my Creator is with me all the time. My Creator is shaping my beard, whatever, changing its color, and so on. Is there any way that would please him. That's the point here. And another thing that we're trying to establish is that Prophet is there for every such concerns of yours. You will go and ask him. If he tells you that you should keep your beard with such length and nothing else, if this is what he tells you through these, the scholarly works and so on, now it's your choice whether you would follow or not. If he tells you, oh, don't worry about the length of your beard, but just try to do it in a way that it will reflect your humility and whatever. If this is the answer, then you will have a choice to follow this or not. What Prophet says about the beard, I don't have this expertise. When I have this concern, I will go and ask these scholars as a means of asking my Prophet. Go ahead, please. Microphone.
I mean, I do understand like the points you both make, but my like question stems from this idea. It's like there were maybe a certain way of doing things in the Prophet's time. For example, combing the hair. Maybe someone has a different hair style, or like someone has a different type of hair. I like my understanding from there is like maybe the teaching is about modesty and you should be like modest, or like how you feel like you're best representing the creator. I like it shouldn't be like, okay, this is how it was done and I need to do it like exactly that way. So that is the distinction that I'm trying to make. Like if we were to say if it's obligatory, even like when you were saying like it's not obligatory but kind of obligatory, then I think we would have to follow the exact same pattern in
So
that way.
that's the reason he said certain practices of Prophet are obligatory. And the examples that he uses here or some other places as well for these obligatory ones. The idea of Tawheed. And if you have questions about that, for instance, if you are saying that, oh, maybe Prophet, follow Tawheed, the La ilaha illallah, because at that time, stop there. Like you already jumped out of the religion, right? Without La ilaha illallah. The idea of prayer, like you pray, you do salah, right? Or zakat, or as I, gave these examples, the salawat. These are the obligatory ones. And then the beard example would be part of this second, third, let's say.
There's the fourth last paragraph.
Oh, okay. I taught it as, a subset of the first two, three, whatever. Let's stick to the three for now. It would be part of the adab, the conduct, how he cleaned himself, and so on and so forth, right? And then he would say, following them is beneficial for you. Why? When you do that, so that's the whole point. Let's look how he explains. Person who practices them transforms his habitual actions into worship and receives significant effulgence. Because by practicing them, he remembers that there is a Sharia, there is a Sharia giver, lawgiver, and there is one who knows this Sharia best, and there is one who is loved most by the Creator. So this idea connects you, your Creator. But this also, like this understanding sounds little soft, right? But actually it's the other way around. So for instance, if this is the case, and if you know that the Prophet used to comb his beard in a very specific way all the time, now you cannot say that I don't care about how he combed. And it goes against the idea that I want to know what my Creator is most pleased with. So it's the state of mind but it also relates to the practice. You cannot intentions. So it's intention, but also the practical manifestation. You cannot intend to be humble. You cannot say that I will be so humble. That's my intention. But I will, act arrogant to everyone else. My intention is just to be humble, but this is my way of, acting. There's no such thing. Your practice has to follow your intention. But to your specific question, he's not counting the beard as part of the obligatory sunnah. At least the author is not counting it.
I was thinking of an example, like let's say you want a house built and you draw a blueprint and you go to the company to build that house. They can, the workers can build a house that is functional and has like the minimum requirements. But if it doesn't follow the blueprint, you might not be happy with it. You can accept it and you can also not accept it. And so the way I imagine it, like foundation of the house would be like our iman, right? So if the foundation is weak, you cannot build on top of it. So Allah created us, and then He also created Prophet ﷺ, and He put the best of example in Prophet ﷺ. So if He wants to accept our actions, it will be compared with the actions of Prophet ﷺ. So if our obligations are weak, if our the pillars of religion and iman is weak, all the other practices that are sunnah, or like keeping the beard, or I don't know, like giving sadaqah, or all these other practices, if our main obligation is weak, all these things will not help us. So focusing on like nawafil instead of obligations is like opposite. So the foundation has to be built from like ground up, and then like the pillars, and from there everything gets added on.
Abdurrahman has his hand raised, and also I guess we'll give a break for prayer.
Yes.
So Abdurrahman, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry to disappoint. But I just had a brief comment, I guess, on this topic, which is that, if we look at things from a gendered aspect.
Just
Sorry,
one
would
second.
you
Just
wait
one
for a
second.
second because sound is too low.
Okay, can you talk now?
Assalamu alaikum. How is it now?
It's good. It's good.
Okay. I was just saying, on this topic, I had a brief comment. Jazakallah khair for all the questions and reflections so far. I mean, when I look at this topic from a slightly gendered perspective, it's, as a woman, it's impossible for me to even think or try to practice the sunnah of the Prophet, right? Like combing the beard or having a beard or something like that. Like that practice is just completely inaccessible to me. So in those moments when something is completely inaccessible, I'd say that's where the state of mind or the larger intention becomes important, because I can still take a message of, okay, how do I understand this prophetic practice as it relates to me, or how can I make it applicable to me within my own conditions? I think that's where, again, the spirit of the practice comes into play, especially because, I was just thinking on this topic, like, there isn't necessarily, like, the Prophet never experienced pregnancy or menstruation. There are just going to be certain facets of life that were not physically practiced, nor can I physically emulate from the Prophet, right? Of course, he answered questions about these states, but that's where I think, again, trying to understand the larger spirit of it, of those actions, and what it means to base certain actions through a creator-centric worldview comes into play. But on the other hand, again, that doesn't mean that where it is accessible, like, growing up as a kid, if you have like a role model or some someone you really look up to. Like you try to emulate them in every way because there's a love there that grounds that want and desire for emulation. You want to dress like they do, you want to comb your beard or style your hair like they do, right? So I think in terms of even just the very physical practices, right, when they are possible, I should ask myself the question of what brings me hesitation in wanting to emulate this physical practice in the literal sense as well, along with the spirit of it. I guess that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khairan. So can I make a small comment?
Yeah.
So
Not about the gender,
no,
the gender part.
no, not the gender. So I think that question Kadir asking is, I mean, of course, it's the controversial side of the question that's coming. To what extent can I bend is another way to ask that question. Because as the example, although he started with beard, he also mentioned modesty. Because this is how sometimes modesty is being interpreted. Like at the time of Prophet, Arab women used to cover themselves like this, but modesty in the standards of United States is different. Like as long as you're not opening this and that part of your body, you're being considered modest. And as long as you have the mindset of, I mean, you know, my God and me and whatnot. So why wouldn't this be Sunnah? Actually, this is where the question is eventually going to. We will get into the specific flavor of it, this detailed flavor of it, when we study the topic of ijtihad, because now interpretation, there is interpretation in religion, but to what extent you can, like this interpretation, where does it start, where does it end? That will come at some point. But I guess with today's discussion, within the boundaries of today's topic, the way that Sister Aisha put is where we are, I think.
And also, please, like, try hard. I know it's being so hard not to, conflate them. But when Imam Nursi says Sunnah, do not think about this. What was the word again? Nafila? Yeah. Sorry? Okay. I'm more familiar with Nafila. So don't think about that one. Right? So don't think about beard or smiling, because then the author says there is obligatory part of it. Your mind directly goes, wait a second, it was voluntary, now this guy making it obligatory. When he says Sunnah, he's talking about everything Prophet did in his life, including the way he worshipped, including his mindset, and so on. The word Sunnah here, again, is used in a broad sense. What comes to your mind when we say Sunnah is just part of it. Okay? It's not denying or neglecting that part. It's just saying that this is the obligatory, voluntary part of the Sunnah that we are talking about. Okay? I hope it is clear. Otherwise, it causes, tension. Why do you mean smiling is obligatory? No, we're not saying that. Okay. Let's continue, inshallah. So where is Qadir? Upstairs, okay. So just to make things more practical, to give a practical example, the way, the author uses this term, Sunnah. We just prayed. The praying, the idea of pray, like, well, I need to pray, I need to respond back to my Creator for everything He gave to me, and so on. This is a Sunnah of the Prophet, which is obligatory. Okay? We prayed 3 rakat together, right? Which is a Sunnah of the Prophet, which is obligatory. And then some of us, I don't know whether all of us or not, I don't know, but some of us prayed two extra. This is a Sunnah of Prophet, which is voluntary, okay? Not obligatory. But because he used to do it almost all the time and so on, people would, from the fiqh language, people would say, okay, it may be something between, the obligatory and voluntary and so on. This is not our business. What I'm trying to say, no. The point is not about, these details, right? So for instance, with Asr prayer, it will be, let's say, easier to give the example. If you pray 4 extra before, everybody would call it as the voluntary Sunnah, okay? And then when we were praying, we were being kind to each other. I asked something from brother Muhammad Sial. Can I pray here? And, can we switch our places and so on? It is a Sunnah of Prophet, like being kind and so on, which is voluntary and considered not related to worship itself, but adab, right? The third category. And then while I was praying, I took into account my daughter's need. I should pray on the corner so that she will have access to me and so on, shaping my prayer to some extent due to needs of my family and so on, which is a Sunnah of the Prophet, which is voluntary about the adab and so on, maybe. If she was crying, I would hasten my prayer, which is Sunnah of the Prophet and so on, right? So just as a practical example, everything we did, prayer itself, the type of the prayer, the way we prayed, how we acted upon during prayer or around prayer with friends and so on, they are all relates to Sunnah of the Prophet. Some of them obligatory, some of them not. Is it clearer now how we use the term Sunnah, inshallah? Okay, there are 2 points I want to cover as part of this discussion today. One is the religion being completed and perfected. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم. Today, I made it perfect, right? Like a kamal, for you, your religion. I perfected your religion for you today. Completeness of the religion. Like we think that we consider it as the religion is complete, it is in the perfect shape and so on. So what we understand from that, what it means is religion being completed. And then the other term is that I like to cover is bidah, innovation. We should cover this too, inshallah. And we can say that, okay, we studied the text. I will need your 5, maybe 10 minutes so that inshallah Yusuf will lead that part.
Okay. So, religion being completed, any comments? We're back. Okay. 10 minutes. Life is passing too fast.
So, okay, the reason I want to talk about this completeness and author, gave this ayah. So we usually take it as religion is already, there. Every detail and everything every concept, every practice, every details are already written somewhere. All these scholars already studied everything. So almost there is nothing for you to think about. Right? This is the usual way we take it. And to some, like from one perspective, it is true that everything is in front of us. Right? But the way I understand from this text, the completeness and the perfection is about the way to reach a certain outcome. Right? How to reach a relationship, a muhabba, like the love, the loving relationship that we studied last week with your creator. That's the outcome. How to reach this outcome? It is perfected. It is complete. But it doesn't mean that you don't have to take the journey anymore. Just memorize certain things and you are done. You have to take the journey. You have to start from beginning, establish the fundamentals, like believe in God, believe in hereafter, and so on and so forth. And then step by step, reach to the point that it is complete and perfected for you. So, in that sense, there is no such thing as being a convert. Some people start their journey at age, let's say, 20. Some people start their journey at age 30. Some start their journey at age 5. Some, unfortunately, do not start their journey because they thought, oh, yeah, I'm already Muslim, so I don't need to do anything. It's a journey, and you have to start it from one point of your life. For that reason, understanding prophethood and the practices of prophet is so important, because it will be essential, like it will be a guide, a reference point for you in this journey. Does it make sense? Go ahead, please.
So this with the verse when it says, I perfected your religion, my creator is saying that I perfected it, I completed it. This is an important point because, like, practically what's happening, if you look at it, in many so-called Muslim countries, there's this attitude of let's update the religion in the sense that look what the West did. Like the church was a shackle for their progress. So they came up with Protestantism. They reinterpreted their religion. They renovated their religion. And then they even sort of push it to the side and then do all these scientific developments and whatnot, because, like, come on, this is 2,000 years of knowledge. How could it fit us today in this civilization time? There's this urge. Let's talk about a different example. You will realize that it makes more sense. Let's say some scholar from 1000s or 1200. Let's say you take the book of Ghazali, you take the book of, let's say, I don't know, Rumi. Okay, very nice. They made their explanations and they interpreted Quran for their age. But today, when we look at how they interpreted Quran, they took the Quran, but the way they interpreted it, we said that it's that interpretation is not fitting my time, for instance. I can say this for a human being, right? A human being's interpretation. So when my creator is saying that I completed the religion, as if it's saying that I know that you are in need of change, or everything in this creation is fresh. You would like this to be fresh as well, but I completed it, meaning this is in the perfect form, in the perfect shape. That's an important thing to think about, my creator putting this mark. But while putting this mark, now the author is saying that this mark is not only about verses, it's also about how verses are interpreted by the prophet in his life. Like, I can say this interpretation of the verse by Ghazali was valid for 1200, but when it comes to Prophet's interpretation of the verse, his interpretation or his practice, because practice means interpretation in this case, is still valid for me. Or there are things I need to take from there. This is an important distinction, because like now we are reading Nursi. Many people are saying that, oh, Nursi, okay, yeah, he was a brilliant mind, he talked best for his time, but he passed away at 60s. Now we need to open it up. We need to carry it one step further. Like there's this attitude. When it comes to Prophet, do you feel as such or do you not feel as such? This is the question here. So do I feel like I should, okay, I mean, it's a little old-fashioned now. Let's come up with something new. So this is why when now author is mentioning, since the second question you asked was, what is bid'ah? So renovation, something new coming into place. Yes, creation is happening anew. Everything is changing moment by moment. So how do I apply Prophet's life to my ever-changing life today? And that's why I think the distinction of these three-tier classification of Sunnah, when the author said one type is obligatory, meaning there's no question, like Prophet deliberately, clearly made it this way, and you need to do it this way. And then there's this like optional part still in there, you need to do it the way he did it. But when it comes to conduct, the way he did it is the best form. If you like sleep this way, because these are the examples he gives for conduct. Do you sleep by putting on your right side, or you sleep by putting on your back? So Prophet did it sleeping on the side, but my back is hurting and I cannot sleep by turning to the side, for example. So if I sleep to sleeping on my back, like, it's an innovation, it's something new. I am going with another option than the Prophet himself provided. What is wrong with this? Or is this wrong? Or like another practical question Natalie asking was, she says, I cannot eat dates. So
You have to. We will teach you, don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, is this something bad? Am I doomed? What I'm going to do? So this sort of distinguishing is important in the sense that, I mean, that worry is valuable, because showing the respect to say that I really would like to do it the way Prophet did it, but I am not able to, let's say. So what do I do in this case? In there, and it was mentioned before when we were entering the text at the beginning, it said, doing something just because Prophet did it. It was the very first point. Makes you remember the Prophet, which makes you remember the Creator. And this is really the gist of being an abd in this existence. So this is why how it becomes a worship. So irrespective of, well, it is just eating or sleeping this way or sleeping that way, but it becomes an act of worship because it makes me remember my Creator. This is the important part of prophetic practices.
Jazakumullah. I mean, it's a very tangential topic, but when it comes to scholars, it is your responsibility. It's not like this doesn't mean that you can do it now, but it is your responsibility. It's expected from you, especially educated people. I mean, if you consider yourself educated, that's another question. That take their work further, one step further, open it up. It is expected. That's how you respect them. Like when Imam Rabbani came 1,000 years after the revelation, he didn't say, who am I? There are 1,000 years of works before me. I will just memorize them and live my life. He didn't say that. He opened up what is before him. Scholarly works. Same goes with the Ghazali or any other scholars, or Imam Nursi. In 20th century, He didn't say, oh, there are all these great scholars, we need more. That how he respected them. Took their work and make it more applicable to people of his age. That's a scholarly attitude. But when it comes to Prophet's ways, none of them question it. They said, okay, I'm taking the same path. Obligatory parts, I will not even, question them. I will take them as coming from my Creator. Others, I will try my best to, as Yusuf said, the adab things. I will try to follow them as much as I can for the sake of remembering the role of the Prophet in my life, and then through that remembering the one who creates everything. So the bid'ah, interesting, author puts it in a way that if you want to innovate something, you need to see a deficit there. Otherwise, you wouldn't even, try to do something new. Like, the question is then, what is the deficit that you see there? And we will open this up a little bit more when we study the topic of Ijtihad, as Yusuf said, the innovations, or not innovation, the interpretation, right? But bid'ah or innovation comes with the idea of something is deficit, that there's a deficit in something is missing, or you are not happy with certain applications. Again, then you should ask question, why I'm not happy? Is it because of there is something genuinely wrong with that, the way it is narrated to me and so on, or I have some other agenda? It doesn't fit to the this modern way of living. People are more interested in the beauty nowadays. So more beautiful I am, or handsome, I don't know, it's better, and it doesn't fit with this idea, this the Sunnah that I learned. So what is the point there? That's I guess the important thing, the question. What leads you to do that? Go ahead, please.
So after explaining all these, he is bringing up this last paragraph, which is an interesting part that might go with Khalil's question. I'll just read it, the last paragraph. The most important among the practices are those that symbolize Islam and are connected with its marks. The marks of Islam are worship, concern the community, and quite simply are general rights of a sort. Just as the whole community benefits from one person doing them, so too, if he gives them up, like even everybody gives it up, the whole community is going to be responsible. There can be no hypocrisy in the performance of marks of this sort, and they should be proclaimed openly. Even if they are of the voluntary sort, they are still more important than personal obligatory acts. This is a very interesting thing he is saying here. Let me exemplify that. So what are those marks of Islam that are practices of prophets? And although it might be voluntary, he says it might be more important than personal obligatory acts. So like in this society, let's say in the United States, what is considered as a mark of Islam? Meaning somebody would say, oh, this guy is Muslim. When they see that mark on you, they will say this person is Muslim. It's a sign of Islam. It's not obligatory, but it's normally voluntary, but it's a mark of Islam. I guess the way you wear, because we would say, oh, this is Arab clothes, maybe you would say, but in this society, that clothing, especially in this society, only Muslims are wearing this way. So it becomes a mark of Islam for the society. If it's totally abandoned, meaning everybody is wearing Western like me, then every single one of us will be responsible, as author is putting. But I said, if somebody carries this flag, if you like, then everybody will benefit. Because what does this mean? I see somebody else wearing it, I will remember something that I neglected, but my brother did it. So I benefit from somebody else's practice as well. So these are extremely important sunnahs, he says, and it might even be more important than your personal obligatory acts. So much so, he says, there cannot be any show off in performing these acts. So sometimes it might be that this is generally the thing with beard, for instance. Like, I mean, I'm a humble, pious person, and he is a very arrogant person, arrogant but religious, pious, apparently pious guy, right? And he puts the beard, and I say, oh, rather than being like an arrogant pious, I'm just going to shave my beard, and I'm going, like, from within, I'm going to be the most pious guy, as if shaving becomes my act of piety in this sense. But the author in here is saying that no, putting this beard in this case cannot have any source of arrogancy. You should be proclaiming it, explicitly making it. This is an interesting point. I just paraphrased this paragraph in terms of importance of signs of Islam. But we should ask why also, because author is not a political identity type of a person. He is not saying that, okay, we have to stand strong and whatnot. But what is the point of this signs of Islam? Why is he mentioning this that much? And there's definitely a room for this in Prophet's life. When Prophet moved to Medina, he just changed the way he was wearing, not to be the same with the Jews in Medina, for instance. Like when he was in Mecca, he was it with his hair or cloth? Like he changed his style when he come to Medina, because in order not to be like Jews.
Jewish.
Yeah, so it looks like there is a importance in Prophet's life in which the way you live matters. Yeah, any comments, any questions?
Kadir raised his hand while microphone goes there. Let me clarify one thing. His interpretation of the Arab clothing in US is his interpretation. Don't take it as Imam Nursi is forcing us to wear in a certain way.
I think that part of my question has been answered. My next thing that I don't understand is how is the whole community answerable? Like if someone gives up, I think
No, if everybody gives up,
no,
its whole community would be responsible.
okay.
If everybody gives up, everybody is responsible.
The other way, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like then it becomes the source of the what is it called? The public oppression. Yeah. Kadir is sensitive upon oppression. Mashallah. May Allah make him among the leaders of the community, so that he act against the oppression. Inshallah.
Weird question. It stems from I met someone yesterday in DC, and it's the type of personality that I struggle with the most. And that guy had that personality, and I was thinking this guy comes off as someone so pious, and he's preaching all of these things, but at the same time, he's this kind of a person. Though that's why I was like, yes.
You have to have beard, you said?
Yeah, he was saying all of that stuff.
Yeah, you have to. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way Imam Rushd is framing it is there are certain ones that are like nawafil from adab. So if you do it, you will benefit. If you don't do it, you will not benefit from it. But there's also one point though. If I do say that at this time, beard, no way. I mean, it's just now I am just going against it. It's a totally different story though. Now I am belittling this. It's a totally different story. But if I say that, yes, this is a mark of Islam, because if I put it, yes, it's going to remind me and others about Islam. But for whatever reason, I am choosing not to do. So I do not benefit from it. So it's my loss. It's a loss from benefit. But otherwise, like I am in the darkness. Am I staying in the darkness as if I would, for example, if you do not do prayer, it's not only loss of benefit, you are also being in darkness in this case. So the two are different in this sense.
So this community, can you, go ahead, please.
In that sense, like if you're keeping it just for the sake of it, then there's no like, point of it. I would say, like if it's not increasing your iman, any act that you would do, would you term in that way?
Say it again.
So if someone is doing it and like they're not like maybe a good person or like they're not empathetic or like they're, so is that even like how would you define it? Like are they following the sunnah or not?
Feel like all these other things are other things, but as long as you have the niyyah for that specific act, that oh, I'm doing it because the Prophet did it, I think your niyyah is clear in that way. Like if you're doing some other bad things, you'll be judged for that. That's a separate thing. But specific, like those, all these other acts should not impact this act, because if you're doing one good thing and there are bad things too, they shouldn't come in the way of your one good thing.
But the way the mark thing works is like people see anyone with a beard and then not performing good actions, they would say like, oh, this is a Muslim guy, or maybe this is the teachings that are being taught in Islam. So that's why I'm asking, like, it's contradictory in that way now.
So, okay, when it comes to actions of the others, we should be very careful there. Like there are certain the ayahs prohibit us to interfere with the people's mindsets and so on and so forth. So we cannot, judge people's intentions. Also, it is like when it comes to fiqh, as like these are fiqh, the topics. The fiqh matters are always shaped and written with respect to what is seen, what is shown. Like you cannot judge people's intentions and say that you are acting sinfully. If somebody says they are doing it for the sake of profit, your job is to believe that and not question it when it comes to others. When it comes to you, you judge your intentions. And this is your responsibility now. Like against others, we need to have this husn zan, like a good goodwill. Yes. They are probably doing it for that reason, unless they say otherwise around. Like unless they say the reverse thing. If they say, oh, who cares about the Prophet? For such text, like we should take it for ourselves. Okay? Now we are studying how Birkan should act, how Ahmed should act, how Qadir should act, and how Sarah should act. That's the topic. I'm not criticizing you. Don't get me wrong. Of course, it's normal that the other people would remind us certain things, and we will come here and discuss about this certain things. That's normal. But the point is trying to understand what I should do. And it goes to intentions, your intention, not others.
I mean, I'm not judging someone based
Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying, like, if someone is doing something objectively wrong, it is objectively wrong. Like, there's no thing about intentions at that point. And then another thing is like, since we're talking about the topic mark and like beard is a mark, that's what I'm asking is like, if someone is having that mark on them, and if they're doing something that is objectively wrong, is that like a good representation of our religion? Or is that even then, at that point, would you even consider his beard a mark?
So again, within this framework, then, if this person is practicing it for remembering the Creator, he benefits from it. So he benefits from it. But then the other questions then is a separate question. Like, shall we go and trim this person's beard because he is acting wrong and then being a like? I mean, what shall we do? Is my question in this case. If, yeah, go ahead.
My is like, you should say like the mark of Islam is like the good intentions or like the teaching of Islam. That should be the basis of the mark in that sense,
So,
not like this physical appearance.
well, can you drink water without putting it in a cup? So why are we separating the two? Like that representation, prophetic act, is a way that this message was represented to me. And as I am going to be, I mean, if the thing is, well, I could have remembered the same thing, not with the beard, but I don't know. I would like to just do it with tattoo. It sounds like this, right? So I would like to, whatever prophet loaded to beard, I'm going to entertain the idea that, oh, my tattoo, and I'll just write it in a certain different shape, or even I would like La ilaha illallah tattoo on my, and I would say, and then everybody sees it as well. It's La ilaha illallah. Everybody would know that.
Heart as well. Heart Allah.
I mean, then this, I think this is what is being mentioned here. Then it's, what am I saying with this act? I'm saying that this is my style of interpreting the religion. Then my Creator is saying that, but I love the way he did it, not the way you did it. You are doing it. So I think this is where things are getting a little muddy, isn't it? But when it comes to this other guy's beard and he's acting bad, I would say, well, I agree with his beard, but not with his act. I think at most is what I would say. Other than saying that, go and chop off your beard, man. Like, I mean, whatever. Like, by the way, there is a hand up. Abdurrahman or Aishanur was.
If it is Al-Shanur, let's go with it. Otherwise,
Okay.
just kidding. I mean,
Assalamu alaikum. I was saying they're not calling on us anymore because they know it's me. But I don't hear much sisters, so I wanted to share something that I feel is still relevant to the topic. Like, the hijab is a sha'ir, is a mark of Islam, and it's a, you know, maybe a different category because it's obligatory. It's not just recommended or something like that, but or voluntary, let's say. But when I had first read this line of there can be no hypocrisy in the performance of marks of this sort, I thought that was very important because I think all hijabis at one point, I definitely have experienced this sense of feeling like a hypocrite, right? You wear the hijab. It is a very visible, clear marker of being Muslim. And yet you might have all these different flaws. You might be arrogant. You might not pray. You might have all these different failings. And in those moments, you question whether you should take off this mark of Islam or not. And it becomes a very real, I think, internal struggle. But I guess here, I mean, one goes down to the meaning of the hijab, which is that, okay, this is my very visible, again, submission to my Creator, that I don't own my body. I don't make decisions about it, but I let my Creator tell me how to, I declare his ownership over it. But at the same time, I just found it important that there is no hypocrisy in it, right? Because even by that very act of visibility, you are reminding others of your belief in the Creator, even if you're struggling in that belief, right? But it's performing a separate duty there. So again, I just wanted to add that into the mix because, you know, there are many sisters who end up taking it off for many reasons, but one of them, I'm sure, is that internal struggle of, am I being hypocritical? And I think that can, in fact, fall into a sort of waswasa or, you know, whispering that is not very beneficial. So I thought that was an important sentence, as even if it's not necessarily under the category of Sunnah, it is still a shi'air of Islam.
Jazakallah khairan. As we are waiting for the moderator, maybe I can give another example here. When Nursi was in prison, he says at nighttime, normally he has his schedule of reading certain zikrs, like reminders and whatnot. But as he was doing it, as he was murmuring the zikr, so he says, I realized that the guardians were hearing me. So a whisper came to me saying that, well, am I being like hypocritical? Am I showing off by saying it? So shall I stop or whatnot? Then he says, this is a reminder, like a declaration, a mark of Islam, and this should not be hidden. Hence, he says, and he even exemplifies a prophetic sunnah, which is after the prayer, when when people do Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, Imam makes it a little louder than the rest of the people. So it is again a declaration, a mark demonstrating it. So in this sense, like what does it boil down to then? Representation becomes an issue, is what I'm hearing from here. Like it's not like, oh, religion is in my heart between me and my creator. And then I'm going to be just like anybody else in the society. But no, as this light is in me, it's going to appear outside as well in multiple ways. This is where now prophetic practice is coming into the picture then. Because there once, a few days ago, a brother was sharing a picture in his WhatsApp status, like a very British clothed person with the bow tie and like the cap and what are those, like super British. And says, this is what British Muslims should look like. I mean, fine, if they choose to do so, but it's not how they should look like. You can say this, they might look like as such, but there's no mark of Islam in here. It's just a British guy. So I think this distinction makes some importance.
You have a comment? Yeah, please. Where is the other microphone?
Just as an analogy, an image came to my mind when you were describing that. In like a building, if it's built upon bricks, all the bricks, they share the same mold, the same shape. And as they're fitted together, they reinforce one another as they're depending on one another and in contact with each other. They reinforce one another. But if one of those bricks changes that mold, then it's compromising itself. It's compromising the entire structure. So in that same way, like everybody fitting into that mold actually provides a support for those around them.
Okay, so this community topic is very important indeed. Like there are multiple dimensions, and one of them is like when we say mark of Islam, it also about like being a sign, like a beacon, right? Telling people actively that you are a practicing Muslim, which also gives the signal, gives the message that Islam is here. There is a place for you as well. Like this is especially becomes important in such societies when people are reluctant to perform their religions. When you perform openly, for instance, when you pray openly, it gives the signal that this earth is my masjid and it's yours as well. So it becomes like it gives this relief to these reluctant people. Just by seeing you, they may start praying as well. So in workplaces, we say, we should have a work environment which flourishes creativity, whatever, right? And to establish it, you do what? You put some marks, signs of it. You say, we will design our, the offices in this way. We will put this open space for that purpose and so on and so forth. Why? To flourish something. So same goes with the Iman and Tawhid as well. You should create an environment that would flourish Iman in other people as well. And you cannot do this just by having good intentions in you, because people cannot see your own intentions. You have to show them something that they can hold on. They will see your, for instance, hat, imameh, right? And they will look at you and they will say, okay, this person is Muslim, even if they are not Muslim. It tells them that Islam is there, just walking next to you. If you want to access it, you can access. Otherwise, Islam becomes something very external, far away for these people. Do you know how the Islam is represented, for instance, considered in Spain? We all know that the Spain's history, like for 1400 years, I guess, the Andalus was there. 1400, yeah, longer than Ottoman Empire. Nobody knows that. Yeah. Something wrong happened? Yeah. It is longer than Ottoman Empire. I think it's. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah. Around 1000. Okay. Sorry. Yes. 700-800. Now okay. It is up until 1400s. Okay. Sorry for that. But it is longer than Ottoman Empire. When you go to the, if you go to one of the biggest museum of Spain, there's a section about the religions. One room is dedicated for Christianity, another for Judaism, another for Asian religions, in which there is Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and others as well. So they can do it now because they eradicated all the Muslim, the presence there. Because there are these castles, whatever, they belong to the Muslims at that time and so on. But the symbols of Islam obviously is not living there, right? And they can call it as an Asian religion. So that's the thing that you are fighting against. It's not about, the pride, or it's not about your, the historical, what is it, dignity. It's about whether you create an access point to other people for Islam or not. Here, if people walking by, and when they hear Islam, they say, oh yeah, it's the Asian religion. It's not about us. And you're not doing your job nice, good enough. But if they see you and say that, no, Muslims are everywhere, and my neighbor is Muslim, if I have a question, I can go and ask them, that's a responsibility on your shoulder. That's another dimension of this sign and mark of the Islam as well. So you have to wear it one way or another. You have to show it, especially when it comes to fundamental practices like praying, calling for adhan. You have to do it openly. You should do it openly, not as a pride of your, the society or your culture and so on, but to tell people, give the message to them that Islam is here, close to you. It's not in Asia. Should we stop here? Are we done? Okay. Any other comments, concluding remarks? Okay. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.